Unfortunately, I'm not surprised that something that was mainly used for artistic, expression and versatility is now mainly being used as a marketing ploy.
That's it. That's my intro.
Hi, I'm Amanda, you're watching Swell Entertainment, and today we are talking about eras with celebrities, specifically eras with musicians. That's mainly who I'm talking about, but musicians doesn't honestly have as good as SEO as just celebrities, so that's why the title says Celebrity Eras. Another YouTuber did make a video about this fairly recently, similar topic, okay? Joseph Fisher made a video, The Celebrity Obsession with Having an Era. As you can see in the screenshot here, I watched a whopping, I think, a minute or so of it, 2 minutes of it, before I was like, oh wait, I want to make a video on this. So I immediately stopped. Okay, there's my proof. I did not watch more of Joseph's video, but Joseph is mainly talking about with the obsession with having an era, from what I can tell. I am talking about the marketability / finances of eras. But really quick, let me tell you about the sponsor for today's video, Rocket Money. Whether you are self-employed like me or you have a 9-to-5, it is now more important than ever with the rise of inflation to track your money. Not even just having a budget, but knowing exactly where all of your money is going so that you can make the best decisions for your own financial future and maybe even your family's. Because of the nature of my I Tried It So You Don't Have To series, I end up signing up for a lot of services that I just don't want, but I sometimes forget to cancel them until it's too late, and that is where Rocket Money can help me. Not only is Rocket Money tracking my subscriptions, but they're tracking subscriptions costs. Let's say I subscribe to something at one rate and then 1 month it's higher than the others. They will alert me to that change in subscription rate. Rocket Money is the app you need to help you save more and manage your money better. They also help you cancel subscriptions and lower your monthly bills. I am still in the process of trying to save for a house, and with their smart savings goals, they help me track exactly what I need to be saving to get to my goals in a timely way, but also helping with my budget so that I can save money while also continuing to provide the good food for Hermes. Get control of your finances today. Go to rocketmoney.com/swellentertainment to get started for free, but you can unlock even more features with premium. Again, that's rocketmoney.com/swellentertainment. And thank you again to Rocket Money for sponsoring this video. So first off, what is the celebrity era? For me, I define an era as a very clear section of time in an artist's body of work that has a clear distinction start and a clear distinction end. Maybe the vibe is drastically different. Maybe it's something that an artist just says, but there was a very clear start and end point to an era specifically. Now, an era doesn't necessarily need to be an album in and of itself. It could just be literally like a 3-year span of time. It could be a section of time where an artist is dealing with burnout and whatever they were able to create because they are just trying to get themselves to create. There could be a variety of things that really entail in an era, and it is to each their own for the most part. But now, I think in the most modern sense of the word, we see an era defined as an album and the following tour. Now, technically, you could say that a tour is just accompanying an album / the era itself, and it's just like the tool being used in the era. But I think you can very clearly see the connection to the tour, so therefore I say an album / tour, because they're usually go hand in hand for a good chunk of artists that are working today. Now, just to be a little more thorough, I tried searching up celebrity era definition or musician era definition, and I just keep getting a bunch of stuff about celebrity culture. But someone did bring up, Paris Hilton, Britney, and Lindsay Lohan. I mean, that era of pop culture in and of itself, I do consider an era because it's a very distinct vibe. So yeah, I guess it is a very clear, start and end of like a year-long period of a type of culture, which I just feel like we don't really have as much anymore. I don't think we get the same type of era situation that we do with celebrity culture nowadays, just because of the ever-evolving trend cycle and the ever-evolving sense of self-separation and self-deifying, I guess you could say, with celebrities, whether it's self-deifying, management deifying, or etc. You just kind of see the culture in and of itself. It becomes a very clear individualistic culture versus the culture of like a group of particular celebrities in a particular group of time, which is why I feel like we can look at eras in more conjunction and clearly where it comes to music, which is why I feel like music eras is where we see it the most. I should also note that we can see eras as well in actors. A lot of times actors that only did comedy for a good chunk of their careers, whether it's by design, typecasting, etc., or choice of projects, and then they start doing like only drama, or they only start doing horror or things like that, and we see that pivot. They could call that their own eras, or it could just be, trying to get out of being pigeonholed. I don't necessarily think it's like, oh yeah, it's my bad girl era or anything like that. I think it's more of someone just like actively trying to get out of being typecast in something. But the first time I heard the phrase era in association with a musician, actually, in my opinion, I would have to say it was the 1975. And this, in my understanding, was very clearly connected to their albums and their tours in that same instance. It would be instances like, oh, this is their Pink era, or the black era or the white era, and it would usually be their logos changing color and associated with an album, and then therefore the color would change for shows and things like that. I don't really listen to the 1975 anymore, so I have no idea how much this has changed. But that is where I mainly became aware of them. And when I was in, I would probably say high school. Now, what I feel is very common with my demographic of like Gen Z, millennials, and all of that is that we see the term era kind of placed in hindsight on albums that were a big deal when we were in school and things like that. For example, I hear that a lot with 5 Seconds of Summer. I never heard the phrase era associated with them, really. Not to say that it wasn't, but like I feel like in the fandom it wasn't a big deal. And then now it's like you look back on their albums and you're like, oh, this was their corporate era or their defining era, their name era, their for the fans era. Like just everything is an era now, which again, that's a fandom thing. That is a fan culture thing, applying that to, you know, an artist's body of work. Okay. And I think that is also something that we see a lot nowadays. It's always been a thing. We've always seen corporations and executives and producers, etc., using fan culture and trying to apply it to media or art and things like that. A very big instance of this that that still irks me to this day, I made a video on it way back when I was a small YouTuber, a little baby YouTuber, was when the Russo brothers co-opted the phrase spoiler for Don't Spoil the Endgame, and Endgame had a whole marketing pitch around not spoiling the movie. And I don't know why that bothered me so much back then. To this day, it does still irk me. But now let's talk about eras. As far as the Eras tour and Taylor Swift. When it came to Taylor Swift and eras in general, the phrase era, I really think that it kind of became embodied by her and her, you know, approach to her music, really when it came with Reputation, okay, her Reputation album. I'm not going to sit here and go into the lore of Taylor Swift because I don't think that's necessary at this current point in time. But if you want to know more about the, you know, Easter eggs and all of that of the Reputation album, there's probably a bajillion and one videos about that here on YouTube. You can go do that yourself. The Reputation era is what I would hear the most often and things like that. And then I feel like that's when Taylor kind of started referring to her old versions of herself as her eras. And then obviously in Look What You Made Me Do, one of Taylor's songs from Reputation, we saw, you know, her using her most iconic costumes and things like that from throughout her career and essentially battling others, killing them off one by one, etc. And just kind of showing, you know, the eras of her career and the eras of her music and her songs. It was interesting because in that instance, I felt like the eras were her most marketable moments because if I'm remembering correctly off the top of my head, I haven't seen the music video in a minute, a lot of the eras weren't even like music video looks or anything like that. They were things that she wore on like stages and things like that as well, which is very interesting to show like, oh yes, my most viral moments are the moments of my eras that are era defining, you know, which I find interesting. There's something else there. We're not going into it, but I do think there's something else there. Now, then obviously in 2019, Scooter Braun sold the masters, Taylor Swift's masters, to someone else that wasn't Taylor, which then prompted her to re-record her old discography, essentially her body of work. And I still think that this was the right move for her. I still believe that. I still respect this decision to go and re-record all of her previous albums because it is her voice, it is her words. To go and re-record those and re-release them makes the masters not as valuable anymore. And now obviously we have the Eras tour that is still going on at the time of me recording this. I did do a review of an Eras tour stop. I reviewed her second stop overall, which was Vegas back in 2023. That video is available. You can go watch that now. We're not going to really go into that, but obviously to co-opt era as the Eras tour and make that into this big whole thing, obviously, and really have defined eras. And then throughout the show, she goes, you know, now we were in the Fearless era and now we're in the Red era. And again, going through her music and things like that. What I didn't touch on about the re-releasing of her re-recordings is she's also doing vault releases where it's songs that she seemingly never released for whatever reason. Making an album is a very, you know, personal and artistic process, regardless of what you have opinions of for Taylor's music. Like there is decisions of what goes into a song then versus now versus why it's left off an album. I know some artists have talked about how there's like usually 50 to 80 songs that they end up writing and they only put out an album with like 20 songs, 10 songs, 15 songs, whatever. There's usually more than what's on an album and what's off of it. So obviously there's the marketability of like, oh yes, if you buy this album, you get that. Now obviously Taylor is the most obvious example that I can point to for the marketability of eras. Obviously, the Eras Tour literally made this woman a billionaire, but we can still talk about, you know, the financial choices and plans that go into an era and making your whole body of work essentially commodified as a trend in and of itself. Now, obviously, like I said, there's a variety of reasons as to why a celebrity may want to consider a album or a chunk of time in their career as an era. Sometimes it's a self-healing era. Sometimes I believe Halsey specifically talked about, you know, her album where she was talking about, you know, dealing with pregnancy and things like that. Other times it's like, oh, I was a Disney kid and now I'm not a Disney kid. I want to make sure you know I'm not a Disney kid anymore. Not to say that that's necessarily what Olivia Rodrigo is doing, but for example, you see like the purple era, the light purple era. I'll never forget when Sour came out and then Guts came out and everyone was like, maybe it's not an era, maybe she just likes the color purple. Like there was like a whole debate online. I'm really sick of the purple. Why are we doing purple again? And it's like, maybe she just likes the color purple. Maybe that's the choice that she has made for her career. I also like green. I've got green all over this goddamn apartment. If Hermes liked wearing colors, he would have a green collar. Could be a variety of things as to what deems an era. And I feel like an era is the set of time, and maybe a personal artistic choice is what deems an era necessarily. It's not always super in your face, like Taylor Swift having essentially whole different vibes and whole different creative visions for her different albums and things like that, like Midnights to Tortured Poet Society to, you know, Fearless to Red, etc. Or a JoJo Siwa's edgy bad girl gay pop era. You know what? If you just weren't so loud and wrong about 90% of what you said, JoJo, I feel like I would be much kinder. Do you? How you want to express your sexuality and gender identity, totally cool. It's the claiming to be a pioneer for something that you're just not. That's what gets me. Randomly, I get told about my different eras, which are always very fun. I moved a lot when I was a small YouTuber, you know, with my dad and things like that because we had no money. And so there's always like, oh my gosh, this is such a weird era of Amanda. And it's like, I was broke. The doorknob era when I was at my dad's old condo, where I would film in front of my door all the time. My LA studio era where I'd film in front of my computer. And now my LA big apartment era. It's usually based on where I'm filming, which is always very interesting to me. I'm assuming it's because I make such a variety of content that's a little harder to be like, oh, Amanda's in her event era or like her commentary era. It's like, because I just do whatever I want in that week, so I don't go clinically insane. I see that as well with YouTubers, where a lot of YouTubers, because of the nature of social media, constantly having to adapt to the changing algorithm, what your audiences want, your audience aging out, etc., you end up pivoting. So there's quite a few creators who, you know, I feel like there was a boom a couple of years ago where a bunch of beauty YouTubers out of nowhere started doing true crime content. That was a pivot. Sometimes people pivot where it's like, oh, I'm going to make only vlogs, or I'm going to do only this, or I'm going to do only, I'm super wealthy and hot, I'm only going to do that. I see this mainly with female creators. Not to say that I don't see it on occasion with male creators, but I feel like male creators are more likely to just be like, oh yes, this niche is what's making me money. I must only do this niche for the rest of time. And then randomly they start doing music or comedy. And then they're like, I'm no longer a YouTuber. I'm now an artist. But let's talk about the finances of eras, okay? Because let's be realistic. Fan things are one thing. When it comes to eras now, okay, when an artist themselves chooses to have an era, okay, not like, oh, a fan is like, you know, I just love this new era for them. They seem so much lighter and happier and artistic. You know, they no longer, they're not held down by a label anymore. They're doing an independent artist thing and they just seem so much happier and lighter. Not talking about that. I'm talking about an artist specifically making the choice of, I'm going to do something so different from what I've done previously, or something so clearly defined in aesthetics, in tone, in all of it, okay, that this is how I'm approaching my next era as an artist. And there's usually, like I said, an end date. Now, typically, I see it that if there is a very clear, drastic change between this current project and the previous project, it is typically because they realize there's a marketability there. Now, for example, with Taylor Swift in particular, I think this is very clear, where, for example, the cardigans have become a big deal, okay? I have not bought one since, but I do have the Speak Now cardigan, but that's because Speak Now is my favorite Taylor album for years. But she started doing cardigans during Folklore because of the song Cardigan, okay? And then she did a follow-up cardigan when she dropped her Evermore, yes, album, not long after, okay, and she had written 2 albums during lockdown. I'm assuming that they were like, oh yes, the marketability of cardigans, and so which one was it? Was the first re-recording? I'm not quite sure. But then obviously you start realizing, oh, these cardigans sell out, they love it, they flock for it, okay? We obviously need to do a cardigan for every single re-release that we do. A whole new merch line for this new album, okay? Let's have, so that you can just show off your love for that, particular album, that particular vibe, and make it very clear. Now, this instance is just marketing for celebrities, okay, and artists. That's just merch, okay. If I release an album tomorrow, I would have a merch with a song on it or something. I don't know, or like something that was like, look, I make gay music, hi, something, I don't know. Now, because of limited drops as well as the eras and like, oh, she's going to do a re-release then, she's going to do a re-release now, she's going to do, she's going to release Taylor's version of this, she's going to do that. There is now a finite amount of time. And even then, after I bought that cardigan, I still get emails from Taylor's team, okay, from her merch page, where it's like, celebrate this era, it's going to end soon, you're running out of time, we only have so much time to celebrate this era for 1989, not 1989, Fearless, one of them. One of the last re-releases, okay? I was getting those emails constantly for that particular cardigan and things like that, okay? And the same goes with any other merch that is of that era. And it's like, yes, technically, she could still be selling merch from an album from back at the start of her career if she really wanted to, but she's not. Now she's doing it now with this re-release because it's back in the, cultural zeitgeist and all of that. That is one thing in and of itself. Now, with artists, historically, okay, there's always been a culture around band tees, old merch and things like that. I think now it's less so because of the drop in quality of merch manufacturing. It's always funny to me when a piece of like a TikTok goes viral and it's like, I just found an artifact in my room and it's like an Ariana Grande shirt that has like random hearts and things on that from her first tour like forever ago, and it's like, in theory, this is like literally a big deal because this is an old school Ariana Grande fan shirt, okay, for a piece of merch. But instead it's like, it's falling apart and etc. I'm using Ariana Grande as an example, not to say that her merch is falling apart, but she's historically has had a few merch issues. But then so is every artist now. So does Harry Styles, so does Taylor Swift. I got a sweatshirt when I was at the Eras tour that I just ordered online, and it came and it had all this weird dust on it and it smelled horrible. I was like, where did you make this? This is crazy. Let's just say I'm an artist, okay? I've released an album previously. You all loved it, because of course you did, okay? And then I maybe don't release anything for a little bit. Maybe I go on a little tour. Okay, maybe I sell some merch, whatever. And then I immediately say, I black out my Instagram. It's not clever anymore. Stop doing it. That's also something that is the marking of an end of an era where you, or at least the launch of a next one or a next album, where you black out your Instagram or like archive all your posts or whatever. And I just think that's so tedious and annoying. I'm assuming Instagram gives them like a button where they can just automatically do it all. But it is really funny to think of like some social media admin on this like artist team, like just going through one by one and hitting archive on every single post. That must be so annoying. Let's say I do that. Okay. And then all of a sudden, instead of announcing an album, I say, this is a very drastic example, by the way. Let's say I say, new music coming. I'm wiping my merch store in 10 hours, 5 hours, 3 hours even, okay? What's left is left. When it's gone, it's gone. End of an era. Maybe you liked it. Maybe you were thinking about it. But I mean, if you have an artist that you like, most likely if you were even thinking about buying a piece of merch, you're immediately going to go do that. I'm not even using this Taylor as an example. Like, I see this with a lot of artists when they do black out their Instagram or things like that. I see a lot more people being like, oh, I guess I got to go buy that merch shirt, or mentioning it to some degree, or they think about it. It's like, oh my gosh, I got to go buy this piece that I wanted for this song that I like or something like that. Because they are expecting now, because of the marketability of eras, that whole thing is just going to be wiped essentially, and that their merch, their albums, etc. The album's not going away. That's obviously not the point. But like anything that was very specific to that album that the artist themselves released or their label released, the likelihood that is going to become either finite or no longer being produced is pretty high, especially nowadays when there seems to be this, again, this rolling trend cycle and trying to keep up with trends, not even just in, fan culture, but in the music industry as well. As like, oh, well, you're an artist, you have to do a vinyl now. You have to do cassettes next. We're gonna bring cassettes back. Why not? Let's bring cassettes back. Maybe there'll be smoke signals next, and every single artist has to do at least one pop-up where they're doing smoke signals for their songs. I don't know. I think JoJo Siwa is a good example as well for this. I do try and give JoJo some grace because if I was a young adult, an older teenager, and I was still being asked to act the way I did when I was 12 or 8 or etc., I would probably commit violent acts. So I try and give her some grace because she's trying to figure out how to be an adult, at this day and age. But she's doing it as someone who is also incredibly wealthy, okay, because of her career up until this point. I want to make it clear, I don't know what her current state is, but I don't know if you guys remember walking into any store in the 2010s for a while. Everything had something JoJo Siwa on it. The licensing deals that this girl and her family must have been truly insane, okay? Because it was everywhere. It was hair bows, it was toothbrushes, it was crayons, it was coloring books, it was toys, sweatshirts, shirts. There was something with JoJo's face on it, or the rainbow and then the JoJo logo on it, okay? This girl made so much money. Now, I'm not even just talking on the secondary market as well, obviously, because if you're a parent with a small child and they love JoJo Siwa, but then you're like, oh, well, we can't show her any of the new stuff, we gotta go buy the old stuff, then that also keeps those things getting sold out, because I do think that there is something to be said about reinvigorating your old lines of music and things like that. Now, again, JoJo Siwa, also, like Taylor, an extreme case, because most artists do not have a giant multimedia, multi-merchandise type of empire behind them, okay? Most don't have that. That also, though, is reinvigorating any of those sales. They may have definitely slowed down because probably there's some parents that are like, oh, I can't go and look at her. I can't take my kid to a new JoJo Siwa show. I can't. She's putting her hand in her pants on stage and drinking and doing things like that. And it's she's an adult now. She technically can do that. But yes, I get your point. It's not even just the forced scarcity of your old merchandise, your old era, your old music. And it's I'm going to go back and re-listen to this song because I just don't like this new album. There's even that. If someone doesn't like your new album, it's going to at least slightly make them vaguely nostalgic for an album you released a year or two ago. Okay. And that's going to give up it's going to even drive up your monthly sales that way. Okay. So it's that's just, oh God, it's just so crazy. But yes, with JoJo Siwa as well, the marketability of, oh yes, I was this, and now I'm this extreme attempted antithesis. Let's go with that. The attempted antithesis of what I used to be. That the merch variety that exists now, okay, that she really could go for this new bad girl attempted era, okay, could be truly remarkable, okay? I don't know if you guys remember this. There's this trend. I see this a lot, and I want to do this, but I know you guys wouldn't buy it. What was going on for a little bit where all these YouTubers were making hardcore heavy metal style merch? Out of nowhere. I really wish I would have gotten in on this little bit because I love that style. But out of nowhere, I felt all of these random YouTubers would just be oh yes, here is my merch shirt with my logo in heavy metal font. And it's yeah, this slaps. What's going on? I'm assuming there was something where it was the same merch provider or something, and they were hey, does this look cool to you? We're gonna do it. Let's see, JoJo's Siwa merch store. This is definitely a dipping a toe of in an era. I don't think she'll ever go back to this teeny bopper attempt at herself, because I do think at a certain point, for her own sanity, she should definitely continue to outgrow that. But I don't know how much she truly believes in her current very metal and punk rock inspired look, okay, that she is trying to go for currently. This is a very clear attempt at this era. And then one day when you do decide to pivot, maybe you want to do something different. Maybe you want to make just wholesome gay love music, okay, which, we all love, we appreciate it. Maybe you'll pivot and then this will just be a random blip in your career, this crazy karma era that you had. But now we see this as well, in my opinion, with artists where if they are signed to a label as well, they start being told, hey, you got to start thinking about what you want to do for your next album, your next era, things like that, and start really trying to craft a marketing pitch around an album that is being worked on and maybe not even done yet from an artist perspective. We are seeing it's the same thing with Barbieheimer and them constantly trying to, recreate Barbieheimer, even though that was a spectacle that was deemed on social media, that then now they're how do we do this again? What was it? Saw Patrol, with Paw Patrol and Saw movies. And it's no. has to just be organic, okay, with those two drastically different movies coming out the same day. What do you think of eras? Do you think eras are a very still mainly artistic choice for an artist to be making? Do you think that it's now being co-opted with the goal of mainly profiting from the eras? When was the first instance that you remember an era being referred to in the context of a musical artist? What's your current era? Let me know. Comment down below. Reminder that I stream on Twitch. Reminder that Swell Entertainment is now available on Spotify. Reminder to use code SWELL for 10% off on gamer subs. Shout out to my patrons. Thank you so much for supporting me on Patreon. If you also subscribe to my Patreon, let me know down below. Like to follow me on social media. It'll be all up here. And that's me. Have a lovely day. Goodbye. I want to sing Karma's a Bitch. You should have known better for the outro. Maybe do the dance. That looked very suspicious. But I know that JoJo would copyright claim me because she's been doing that. Thank you, Oz, Eva, Ayana, Abby, Angel, Goth, Glenn, Palace, Pink, Jasmine, Lauren, Amy, Aslan, Medic, Rosie, Victor, Andrew, Tenzin, Sam, Mae West, Michael, Ryan, Adira, Nathan, Zwink, Literal, Jeffrey, Randy, QWERTY, Nomad, Thomas, Tasha, Donnie, Winter, Kenny, Robert, Cameron, Elliott.